buddy. How you doing?
Not too bad at all. So what do you have for me today?
Well, Patrick, after much technical difficulty, we have Dad Saves America and academic decay. So
Yes, yes.
talking about the university system and what it looks like when there's ideological capture and the follow-on effects of that on society, and why it looks like our politicians are just not meeting the needs of the constituency, why that happens, and ideological events that cause that. So it's going to start with the Grievance Studies, and that's going to be Helen Pluckrose, James Lindsay, and Peter Boghossian. And the reason that they could do these things is because there's ideologically captured universities, the places where critical thinking and difficult concepts should be introduced to youth, and their ability to grapple with that and manipulate those concepts makes them better thinkers, but they just stop at offense or they stop at some other place because they've been ideologically captured.
Yeah, I see that quite a lot with third level education, where they're trying to keep everyone happy and unoffended. And it just ends up being a complete S show. I can't use the proper term, but I think everyone is smart enough to realize what I'm trying to say there.
Well, and it
without being banned from YouTube.
Right. Well, it leads into debate, speech and debate, where you cannot honestly manipulate concepts, and you have groups of people who say you can't even talk about a thing. If you can't talk about a thing, then everybody goes into their own camp with what they know is right, and then it generates a situation where you other the other guy or gal or whatever. So, all right, we'll let him cook a little bit, and then we'll hop in as necessary. Here we go.
You have to understand the game being played in academia today. Exhibit A, the Grievance Studies affair.
I was in Portland, teaching at Portland State, which was truly an inconceivable ideological sinkhole.
This is Peter Boghossian.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing your evening.
A philosopher and longtime professor focused on teaching critical thinking, pedagogy, and the Socratic method.
All right, so pedagogy, if you don't know, we'll go over the terms so that you know what it is. It's the method and practice of teaching, especially as an academic subject or theoretical concept, right? So he's a philosopher that deals with the concept of teaching and thinking, right? That's what he does, right? Very, very high level type stuff, right? And then Right. So that's his field of study. He is a subject matter expert. He also does street epistemology, where he gets people's opinions and why they think the way they think. And the good one is he has someone who thinks almost mutually exclusive thoughts on how something works, and then why they believe it. Then he has them steelman it, like, what's the best way for your opponent to have phrased this, and then they work with that concept as they understand it. It's actually
I've seen him do videos like that, and they're actually really good, thought-provoking videos, really well put out.
And it gets you thinking, why does someone think in such terms that are so far away from where I'm at? Why is your position so far over there, right? And then he works to bring people's mindsets, at least if they don't agree, as to why it is someone else might believe a thing. And with that kind of understanding, you can create better concepts, right? You can,
and I can bring people together a lot easier as well, I find.
Right, because they're not bad faith actors. They just don't think the way that you think about a concept or a subject. Maybe they learn something.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to do, to understand why it is someone who thinks the way they think, which might be in opposition to your thought process, why they think that way. That's just good, right? So that way you
and there actually gives the young people a good tools for life in general.
Right. Concession and compromise. You can learn what they think and then maybe incorporate some of that into your own thought process, and you become a more complete, functional human that way, right? So.
Exactly.
In other words, an expert in the tools of debate and inquiry. And he knows the threat critical social justice plays to debate and free thought firsthand.
I was told I was committing microaggressions. I was told that questioning was a microaggression. Asking for evidence for policies that are being institutionalized was a microaggression. Asking for evidence of a microaggression is itself a microaggression.
So we have to talk about microaggressions. So apparently this is where there is a bias that you're unaware of that is causing you to act or interact in a certain way. When someone says, hey, I need some evidence for that, if it's you or me, I'm like, hey, Patrick, I don't believe what you're saying is true. You're like, oh, well, hey, Alex, here's the receipts. I'm like, okay, well, now I understand why you think this, that, or the other. And then we can, again, concession, compromise. I can say, okay, I see where you're coming from, but here's what I understand, right? But if you're told,
Yeah, from your point of view,
Right.
that's what people don't realize is we're both from different sides of the pond, as they would say. And it's interesting when we're debating, even off camera, as they say, ideas. We see things completely differently. We might, but eventually we do find a common ground, as they say. Right? But it's literally talking.
Right. And a lot of times it's because Alex is wrong, and Alex can be wrong. Alex doesn't mind being wrong. That's fine. Sometimes Patrick is wrong, but it's very rare. Yes. He has Irishness and whiskey on his side, so he tends to be triumphant. But the problem with the microaggression is you're saying that there is some kind of violence in what you're doing, and that violence offends me. Therefore, I don't have to interact with your concept. That is a problem.
I think I came across this a couple of months ago when we were recording. I can't remember which episode it was, but microaggressions. So I did a bit of research. It seems to be a concept that's wholly part of the US kind of language set in the third level. Microaggressions, safe spaces, that kind of language is more, seems to be centralized in the United States more than, say, the rest of the Western world. Right.
So that's
very rare you would hear it.
That's why this is the downfall of academia in this country, in the United States. So that's what we're addressing. It's trying to go other places, but other countries are telling those kids, hey, don't. And when you worked in the college system and you had to deal with some of these kids that came from the US, they didn't have the skill set to get through the junior or senior year of colleges in Ireland. Primary and secondary. Well, secondary school more so. What I found was the maths they were taught, because in fairness to the young people, they had the intelligence, they just the way they were taught. Accountancy is the same no matter where you go in the world. It's probably the easiest way I could describe this. So if you're a certified accountant, say in the United States or in Ireland or anywhere in the Western world, for every debit there's a credit and so on. We all know the basics. Right, double entry accounting, it makes sense.
Yeah. And part of that then is management accounting and so on. But a lot of formulas that we would use, say in accountancy or management accounting or different form of business mathematics, a lot of those formulas we were taught in our leaving cert here, for the most part. What I found with these young people is they knew the theory behind them, but not actually how to physically do them, or they had very poor mathematical skills. And when it came to long form reading, because you have to, they were looking for summarized versions every 5 minutes, and we're kind of going, no, this is the book you have to study.
Right. These are long concepts, and you're going to have to get the whole concept.
Yeah, and you have to write out your own notes for yourself, so you will understand them.
When I was in college, go ahead.
Well, I saw college professors especially getting more and more frustrated. Well, I wouldn't say frustrated with them. It was more of a kind of, okay, these guys now are paying a lot of money to be here. Can't really tell them to, pound sand, as they would say. But in fairness to a few of the professors, they got into the mature students like ourselves and said, look, any chance you could kind of work with these kids, they're 2 weeks in and they're already falling behind. Any chance, for a couple of evenings a week, just bring them into the library, have a chat with them, see where they are, what they need. And in fairness, once we kind of got going, I wouldn't say they passed with flying colours, but they got enough to scrape by the third year and go back to whatever they were doing in the States. But yeah, I found them, as I said, it's not down to lack of intelligence, it's just down to the lack of being taught properly.
Right. They didn't have someone like Peter Boghossian. So when I was in college, I reached my limit of mathematics. It was in my third calculus class. They brought out tensor equations. Reducing zero out is not an answer. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I've reached my limit. After 2 semesters of calculus, good. Third semester was too much for me, right? But I did basic accounting and statistics and those kind. I did really well with that. But I actually reached my cognitive limit with that third semester of calculus. I was like, okay, cool. I found where I can get to and what I can cognitively drive my brain to. I don't think these kids are even given the opportunity to find their limit, right? So
no, because it was interesting when I was talking to him, because when you're in college, you have 6 modules per semester, so 12 overall.
Right.
And these kids were talking to me that they had 12 or 16 modules per semester. I'm kind of going, what?
Oh, okay.
How can you do? What?
So it has to do with units, right? So each class is either 3 or 4 units, and you're going to get between 12 and 16 units, semester units, when you're in college. That's what that looks like. So They weren't taking 12 courses. They were taking 4 or 5 courses at 3 to 4
No,
each.
what these young people were doing was they were taking optional classes
Right.
on top of their core classes per semester. The way this young lady was talking to me, and I was going, why not just concentrate and get a really good degree? Why are you spreading yourself so thin across multiple classes? Because you're not going to. What I found was they were talked into it by certain professors. Like a professor will be doing social studies. Oh, by the way, I'm running such and such a class at such and such a time. Would you be interested in signing up for that as well?
Well, and on top of that,
You
there's mandatory classes. A lot of these colleges are giving that you have to take that apply to nothing.
Yeah. I understand the mandatory, but these were extra classes being sold to the students is the only way I could describe it.
Got it.
By these professors. And I understand they were trying to make up numbers. Going, there's no way a young person, like 6 modules translates to over 22 hours class time.
It's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah.
Per week. Now, if you double that, that's 44 hours. That's more than a full-time job. And most of these kids, by the way, were working part-time jobs on top of all this as well.
We got to make.
No wonder they were complete. It was like a complete and utter business sense. And also, most of the modules they were studying were complete and utter bull. Yeah. I try to find a nice person.
The other thing that happens there is that the requirement to take some of these classes also justifies more administrative staff, which isn't really needed. And we talked about that with the school system one with Undivided. So let's get back to...
Yeah, we got a bit off track again as there's...
It happens. Let's get back to John Popola. Here we go.
So I started to realize that there was a problem. Where are my colleagues getting their ideas? These ideas are totally unhinged from reality.
Boghossian, along with writer and fellow guest of the show James Lindsay, found themselves more and more disgruntled by this thought-terminating ideology taking over academia, and the gobbledygook that passed for serious research. Then came the breaking point. This actual academic paper published in 2016. Glaciers, Gender and Science, a feminist glaciology framework for global environmental change research. The feminist glaciology framework generates robust analysis of gender, power, and epistemologies in dynamic social ecological systems, thereby leading to more just and equitable science and human ice interactions.
So we're going to back that up a little bit. We got to take a look at that. So
I actually remember when this was happening. It was during, I think it was 2016 onwards, they published a series of papers like this. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these papers got seriously published. And
they did. You're right. But that's the Grievance Studies. So, but this is what was the clutch point for them was epistemologies of dynamic social ecological systems has nothing to do with glaciers. Nothing.
No, right? It was, as they said to themselves, it was a bit of a satire, play on words and so on. What shocked them more was the fact that these got through committees. They got through committees.
Right. So, and the other one, equitable science and human ice interactions. There isn't equitable science. There is either science or it is not science.
Yeah, right? But bear in mind now, this is all pure satire gobbledygook that they put together just as
this isn't one they put together. This is the one that caused the Grievance Studies to happen in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So human ice interactions. What is that? Right. It was
all gobbledygook at the time, and I remember them bringing this up. It's complete gobbledygook. It was a way of someone getting a quick paycheck, by the way,
or something. But it doesn't. There's no reality in this. And when Peter Boghossian says it's unhinged, he's absolutely correct. There's nothing.
He's right.
Here.
Somebody puts this proposal together. What happens is they'll go into this fund a study for this, for instance. I'm just using this paper as for an example. The study could last up to 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And they're getting paid constantly for it. And no one ever checks to see if they're making any progress or... Yeah, it's complete rubbish. Complete waste of resources funding silliness like this.
For sure. All right, let's get back to it.
Just and equitable science and human ice interactions.
Peter called me and was like, this is it. It's too far. If they'll publish this, they'll publish anything. We're writing an academic hoax.
Their hoax paper, of course, needed a catchy title.
The conceptual penis is a social construct.
Boghossian and Lindsay made their paper ridiculous, but right on the edge of believable, for woke academia, that is, with arguments like this.
Anatomical penises are not the male sexual organ. They are instead a social construct that makes men braggadocious and macho.
It basically argues, among other things, that penises are responsible for climate change.
They submitted their hoax, and it actually got published.
Yeah.
This ends up in a small, slightly predatory academic journal called Cogent Social Sciences. Peter and I spiked the football. We prove gender studies will publish anything bogus.
So what this shows is that there's a peer review process that's supposed to take place, and that peer review process could not have taken place if their paper got published, just like the previous paper about the ice glacier human like just gobbledygook. It's just trash.
It's just gobbledygook.
Yeah.
And a lot of this was happening, say, from 2014 onwards. There's a lot of this gobbledygook.
Right. And the other one is
rubbish papers.
They check the sentence structure. And what happens is in some of these papers that they put out, there's the average sentence ends up being 24 to 30 words with a bunch of multiple syllable words that are meaningless.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, it sounds really good, but it doesn't do anything. It
no, it's absolutely rubbish.
On top of that, these papers are almost never cited by other papers. Right. It's just intrinsic trash.
No.
Or they self-refer. They self-refer to things that say exactly what they said in a different way. It doesn't advance human learning, which is what a doctoral thesis or anything like that is supposed to do. So.
I mean, no. And I've seen plenty of doctoral theses over the years. Friends of mine have done them. And to be honest with you, it kind of breaks their heart, is they've genuinely put a lot of work and research into their studies. And then they see other guys and girls write this, especially from, by the way, I'm not going to give out about social studies, but it's usually coming from that department.
Right. The
it's
gender
absolute
studies and
yes, usually they get write this complete and utter gobbledygook, and they get a doctorate for it. It's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Lindsay didn't hide what they'd done, and the hoax became known.
Of course, the usual suspects lost their minds and said, this paper doesn't prove what you think it does. This is a low-level journal. You only did one. You got to do multiple papers. And I'm like, all right, this is awesome. Let's just do exactly what they've told us to do.
That's when Boghossian and Lindsay, with the help of Helen Pluckrose, really went for it. The Grievance Studies affair was born.
We wrote 20 intentionally broken, completely crazy, often vile, reprehensible papers, and then we just started getting them in exactly the kind of journals that they told us.
These papers.
Right. So they took the direction from that review committee, and they said, hey, you guys don't have enough published stuff for us to really believe what you're doing is a real deal. So make some more stuff. And they did. And it was astronomical. Here we go.
Yes.
Are truly nuts and not safe for work or mixed company, so you have been warned. The titles include an ethnography of restaurant masculinity, in other words, the Hooters paper. Who are they to judge? Overcoming anthropometry? Anthropometry? I don't even know what these words are. Okay. Overcoming anthropometry and a framework for fat bodybuilding.
All right, so anthropometry.
I knew you were going to Google that word. I knew it. I absolutely knew you were going to do it.
Scientific study of measurements and proportions of the human body, right?
Yes.
So the measurements apparently are bad, and fat bodybuilders are good. Except I've never seen one. So I've been to the gym. I don't see them that way. So all right.
No.
Here we go.
Okay. Going in. Okay, hold on. Going in through the back door, challenging straight male homohysteria and transphobia through receptive, penetrative sex toy use.
We sent them to, Gender, Place, and Culture, the highest feminist geography journal, Hypatia, the highest feminist philosophy journal, Sex Roles, which is a very prominent interdisciplinary journal about sex roles,
So we can stop this portion of it right now. We're going to forward to a little bit later in the video. But what they did was not reprehensible at all. They were showing that the system is in fact broken with not appropriate peer review and the kinds of things you need to actually publish scientific papers with appropriate evidence value that can be repeatable. That's the important part, that they are in fact repeatable, right? If I do an experiment,
and that's the important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the important part, that they were trying to show how ridiculous the whole system was.
Yep.
It still is, actually. I shouldn't. It still is a ridiculous system that these papers, even a 5-year-old with basic education will tell you that these are complete gobbledygook.
Yeah, they're horrible. They're horrible. They're just not. Yeah, it doesn't advance the human intellect at all. It does nothing.
No, it doesn't. In fact, bestow to knowledge in any shape, form, or fashion. It's not adding to the world in any way. A lot of these studies.
Right. Not the best. All right. Here we go. So with some of the other woke attacks on people like Bret Weinstein and his wife Heather, we see a situation where academia is trying to achieve this kind of utopia, right? Which is the reason he got attacked when he got attacked, and it's why. Students he never taught came into his classroom, challenged him on concepts that had nothing to do with the real world, right?
No, I remember that. That was like himself and his wife were really, really good professors, really good teachers,
Right.
really good at their trade.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that 50 students managed to get them both, it's shocking. Out of that university has 5,000-6,000 just on his particular campus alone.
Evergreen, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
Right.
Crazy how much power that small little tiny minority had.
It was insane. All right, we're gonna let John here cook.
Utopia. That is what drives so much of this, and the siren song, frankly, of communism. I'm using that word, communism. That is what we are seeing on campuses. Students being brainwashed by discredited, diabolical ideas that lead to very, very dark places.
I look around at the campuses of today and I see people who appear to have learned nothing from the 20th century. People behaving like they're red guards in Mao's Cultural Revolution.
And now we have multiple mayors in the United States, Wilson in Seattle, Mondani in New York, that seem to be propagating this same set of values that hasn't worked or functioned. Right? The utopia is not going to be achieved. Right? Especially when Mondani has people working for him like Sia Williams, who says that property shouldn't be a private right, it should be a public domain. That kind of goes against Western culture in general, right?
No, but what I find sad about it, and just judging by some of these two specific mayors you just mentioned there, is when you look at their policies, they're taking policies that work in Europe, but only work in certain countries in Europe. Like they taken our social welfare system, for instance, they want to bring that in. That works for us because we've had a tradition of, social help and so on. But that would, as I said, what works in Europe will never work in the United States.
Different culture, yeah.
Different culture, different set of values. We've had 70 plus years of experience before this. We have the infrastructure in place. I understand Mondani and I understand them trying to bring in some kind of form of social change. But the fact is, if you want to do it in the United States, you have to work within the United States system in some way. You can't just shove in the social housing project that lady was on about in New York.
Mm-hmm.
She took that social housing model from Portugal, which, it worked in Portugal, it worked in certain parts of Spain, Ireland, England, so on. Where semi-private and public. So you build 100 houses, 20 of them are for social housing, the rate are sold in the private market.
Right,
that works somewhere like, say, in Ireland, where land is reasonably, well, at the moment, we're going through a bit of a housing bubble, but for the most part, land is, plentiful and we can build 100 plus houses at a reasonable cost. Right. Now, that will never work somewhere like New York, where land is at a premium and also at a premium price.
Right.
That will never work in New York because that's just the fact.
Well, the
That's the way the system
constituencies
is.
are horribly, like in Texas, it's less than $1,000 to start the process to build a structure. In California,
Yes.
it's over $150,000
Thousand.
before you
Yep.
put in the first nail, right? So they're so
Yeah.
wildly varied and different. And New York City is one of the most expensive places to live in the United States. So,
Yes.
and the new law they just put into place is the city can buy your house. They have 6 months to make the decision. So when you put your house up for sale in New York, the city has 6 months to decide if they want to buy your house or not, and they get first dibs. They're the ones that get to choose
Yes.
first. And that means every house sale is now 7 months,
No.
a process of 7 months.
And bear in mind, we have a. I just what I don't like is the fact that he's housing person. Is he a housing well, he's housing spokesperson anyway.
Tenant spokesperson is functionally a
Yes,
her
I
title.
was trying. Yeah, I was trying to think of her title there, but she was talking about that, and she was comparing to what happens in Europe. No, what happens in Europe? Say if I turn around in the morning and put my house up for sale, I put it on the marketplace, and I could a representative from the council can come to me. I want to buy your house at such and such a price, or they'll pay the market price. They're like any other buyer for the most part. They don't have first dibs or anything like that. It's an open marketplace. They still buy it. What happened was they looked like they seen a model like that in Europe, and then they shoved it in and kind of added their own bits to it. And as I said, it will never work. Our systems won't work in the United States because the United States is not built for it.
Right.
It
So,
doesn't have the mindset for it.
as of January 2026, Cia Weaver, sometimes confused with Cia Williams, was appointed by Mayor Zoran Mamdani to lead the mayor's office to protect tenants as its executive director. So that is her title. So we'll get back to Mr.
Well,
Ferguson.
as I said, I don't mind tenants' rights. Like, go all ahead, I'll go full steam ahead to protect tenants. That's okay. But you cannot throw the landlords out of the marketplace. That is a recipe for disaster.
100%.
It doesn't work.
They'll just leave, and then everything falls apart. When you maintain something that is yours and you own, it's going to be very different than if you don't own it. You will not treat it the same way.
And I fully agree with you, because we have a long tradition, as I say, of social housing in Ireland. And if you go into some of these estates, some of them are very well maintained by the residents in those estates, but for the vast majority they're not. Because if you have no skin in the game, you never put your own sweat equity into buying that property, you're not going to ever respect it.
No, you're just not. You're not at all. All right, here we go.
Apparently unaware that that's what they resemble.
The Red Guard are a scary but appropriate analogy. This was a mass movement of students formed in the 1960s by the communist monster Mao Zedong when he ruled China. The Red Guard, mostly high school and college kids, was created to defend the purity of Mao's brutal totalitarian ideology, to be warriors in his cultural revolution, and to enforce conformity to his utopian vision.
Right, and none of these things are ever bloodless. They never are. Right?
No.
When it gets to the point people are going to react to this very, very badly, it's a recipe for absolute destruction. Right?
Yeah, we see all young people have to do is just pick up Google or just go to your local library, read any history book about any of these revolutions, no matter is it communists or whatever, all through history. There's none of them bloodless.
Yep.
Every revolution comes at a massive cost.
Yep.
And lies, unfortunately.
100%. All right.
They specifically were directed to attack the four olds: old ideas, old culture, old customs, and old habits. These Red Guard destroyed.
So what that is functionally saying is whatever the culture was, you need to destroy that culture to put this new thing in place. That's what that is.
Yes. And that happens across all revolutions, by the way. Like we've seen it in the modern times, I'm going to use Syria with ISIS and all them were pushing in. They destroyed their old history, but they could rewrite over it and put their new history in place.
Right, like the Jacobins in France. It's it's the same.
Yes.
Thing.
Yeah.
Millions of books, millions of pieces of art, and thousands of cultural sites. And they killed people. Lots and lots of people. Among the many targeted, a special focus was placed on intellectuals and teachers. Any of this sound familiar?
Right. So this is the cancer culture thing we were talking about, right? That's Bret Weinstein. And I believe it was May 23rd, 2017 is what he said when those students came to his classroom and challenged him for being an evolutionary biologist, and his wife. And they are two of the best in the country at that. They're amazing.
And I don't feel the problem with an awful lot of these young people is they give out, they roar, they shout, but there's no substance behind it. It's all
slogans. It's bullshit slogans is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we go.
It sounds suspiciously like branding benign and heady middle-aged white academics as racist.
I don't care what happens to Bret anymore. He can go and be racist and be a piece of shit wherever he wants to do that.
Right, but there isn't any proof that he did anything like that. Again, it's the microaggressions, the craziness where someone says something you don't agree with, and as opposed to saying, I have evidentiary value that shows that your statement is wrong on its face, prima facie, it's wrong. And then you can say, oh, well, hey, I've got this other evidence. Let's talk about it. Let's have a discussion. No discussion. Just get bent, right? So.
Yeah, and that's what happened to these. Like, they turn around and they said about this professor and his wife that they were both racist. And when they were asked, show me the proof that he's racist. Well, I feel he's racist. Is most all the videos I've seen is I feel he's racist. No proof that he's actually a racist.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. None. I just feel he is.
Well, that's because feelings matter, Patrick.
Oh.
I'll get you to that wine real soon.
We're closer to domination by the Red Guard than you or I want to believe. And here's the thing about Mao's Red Guard. Eventually, they got too crazy even for him.
Right. So once you let them off the leash, they lose their minds, right? They get a taste for it and they want to be right. And in being right, they end up hurting and killing. It's not a safe situation.
No, because once you leave the dog off the leash, it's very hard to control him. And most revolutions fell into this trap, is the best word to describe it. It's where they hyped up a certain proportion of their followers into, say, the Red Guard here, for example, and so on. And once they're left off that leash, it's very hard to rein them back in. And usually, in Mao's case, he kind of reined them back in by, in the conversation, please. Is that the word I can use?
Yes. The conversation soldiers were sent in. All right, here we go.
Yes.
In 1968, he called in the army to stop the movement of students that he himself had unleashed. They were, in a sense, destroyed by the very authoritarian power they fought for. I've revisited these stories here, from the insanity of the Grievance Studies affair, to Bret Weinstein's surreal targeting at Evergreen, to Mao's horrific cultural revolution. Not to ratchet up the heat in our culture war.
Yeah, that's an interesting parallel, right? We see things going in the same direction, and it is unsafe. It's not good for society as a whole.
But you also have to remember, the problem with young people these days is they're falling into the danger of they're either really, really left or really, really right. There seems to be very few students who just want to get on with the job of being a student in the center, as they say. They just want to go in, get their education, and go home, and that's it. They seem to be kind of getting more and more radicalized inside these institutions.
Right, and there's a mass exodus too, right? So lots of Californians are heading toward Texas, lots of New Yorkers in the Northeast are heading toward Florida, and so the states that are red are getting more red, the states that are blue are getting more blue, and they're gerrymandering and trying to enforce or hold their position with as many locked-in votes across the board as they can in both the Electoral College and in the House of Representatives. So that
but the problem is, you'll see it within the universities, say in really deep red states or really deep blue states, is in the deep blue states, the colleges have become more and more and more left-leaning to the point where normal conversations will not happen. And the same danger will happen in universities in the red states, will become more and more and more right-leaning. And these young students are being failed by academia.
Right.
The job of a student is to learn.
Well, it's
Not first, but
to develop critical thinking skills so they can have their own worldviews that function and work, right?
and work in the real world. Because the sad thing is, when a lot of these students leave, they leave with BS degrees that are not worth the paper they're printed on.
But they don't do anything. Yeah, they didn't learn a thing. They became ideologues. They became advocates, right? They became the revolution. So.
And that's a sad thing is especially in the last 20, 30 years, is I know a lot of people in the US don't like the fact that a lot of US companies have their headquarters there in European countries. The simple reason is, for the most part, when you go to college, say in Ireland, say you go in to study business, you go in, you study business, you get all the professors there, you do the modules for business, that's it, off you go. There's your business degree. There's none of this. Well, they're in the social studies, but that's more social work. But
there's no fluff. There's no fluff. There's no bullshit. You get a degree in a thing. No. That's the thing. You get a degree.
That's it. You teach your course. You have your modules. That's it. Off you go. You're not being upselled. Is the best word I could say. Upselled these BS modules that don't serve any purpose.
Right. They don't give you a foothold in the real world to become something more than what you are. You can't achieve anything with them. Right.
Let's and it's sad, really, because an awful lot of these kids. What is it? The average students pays what, between 80 to 120,000.
I don't know what it is, but it is absolutely insane. Well, and it's the administrators in the system that have just skyrocketed. Right? It's the ratio becomes 3 or 4 to 1 administrator to student, which is insane. That doesn't function. All those administrators get paid. How do they get paid? State tax dollars pay them. Federal tax dollars pay them, and then the unions that are involved also strive for more things as well. But that is another problem we'll discuss another day.
Yes, exactly.
All right, let's have them close this thing out.
But as a warning, without speech and open debate, here's what happens. Entire disciplines, like those exposed in the Grievance Studies affair, become ideologically captured, utterly disconnected from reality, and dangerously radical. Leading journals and whole universities become jokes. No one involved knows it, and if they do know it, they're too afraid to say the emperor has no clothes.
We'll close it on that. I think he's correct in that if you can't have a debate about it, or if you can't bring up concepts and talk about them, then you're failing the students 100%. You've said it before, and many times, we need to stop failing our students, and I think that's the big message. Right?
Yes.
A revolution isn't bloodless, and we're failing our students wholesale at a massive level. So, got anything else for the good of the people, my friend?
I think you wrapped that up quite nicely. As I fully agree with that, says America. We're in a young people are in the danger of falling into the Red Guard or so on.
Right. Some of the cultural equivalent of destroying the culture that there is now. Yeah.
It's crazy. And you see good professors, well-meaning professors, trying to just do their jobs and get absolutely sandbagged by silliness.
Right. We didn't bring up the Yale thing, which is absolutely insane as well, but that's something that we might put in the show notes for you guys to check out. Bret Weinstein, Peter Boghossian, the Grievance Studies. We'll make sure it's in the show notes. So for Patrick McCallum, I am Alex Johansson. Like, ring the bell, subscribe, and help us beat the algorithm. We are out.